think the biggest misconception about cloning is that it's easy to do and that in fact there are people trying to do it, neither of which are true. To clone a human being, and by that I mean a child that would be brought to gestation and born, is biologically virtually impossible to do for a variety of reasons. And more importantly, there's no reason to think that anyone is trying to do this. So cloning technology is used frequently by scientists in a variety of ways, and that's because what cloning technology is at its core is the ability to create an exact replica of cells. And that is something that's particularly important to folks in biotechnology. First of all, in the context of animals, veterinarians and people working on drugs for animals or improved breeding techniques for livestock, for example, use cloning technology all the time so that they can study different breeds, study different genetic traits and how they impact things like if you want low-fat beef, or different quality high-protein milk from cows, things like that. In the human cell context, it's used to clone cells, which is a typical process in biotechnology used to develop medicines or to study different diseases. So stem cell research, as most people know by now, is an area with enormous promise to treat and cure diseases. What scientists can do when they combine cloning technologies with stem cells is they can use the cloning technology to create cell lines or particular cells that have certain genetic components that they want to study. So for example, they can use cloning technology to create stem cells that have the genetic code for something like ALS or diabetes. And by using cloning, they can create more and more of these cells. And the value of that is then they will have a batch of cells in their laboratory that they can use to study the disease, to see how the disease works, how it impacts cell formation and cell division during human biological development. And it can be used when you want to test a particular new medicine on human cells to see its impact on that disease. You can do that using cloning technology. There's no reason to think anyone is trying to clone their child. First of all, it's illegal. Under current law, it's illegal. The Food and Drug Administration will prosecute anyone who tries to do this. Second of all, it's important to know that the scientists and the researchers who are using cloning technology to learn more about disease or to develop cures and treatments for diseases like diabetes or ALS are heavily regulated by the federal government and by state governments often. And they also have to comply with an entire set of ethical guidelines developed by the scientific community. So there's really virtually no risk that anyone is doing this, not only because it's virtually impossible to do biologically, but because it's illegal and the scientific community is heavily, heavily regulated at this time. Another reason why scientists aren't interested in cloning a human being is because there's a real recognition in the community that it is so abhorrent ethically to create a child in this way that the backlash that would come not only from the rest of the scientific community, amongst the colleagues of a scientist who decided to do this, but from the general public, that in fact the backlash would probably lead to the stifling of an enormous amount of very, very promising research. In fact, we've seen this in the past when I mentioned that there was a cult that said they were interested in cloning a human being at one point. There was a rogue doctor in the late 90s who said he was going to clone a human being. And in both of those situations, the response was efforts to outlaw all use of cloning technology, including the use of cloning technology in combination with stem cells. And so, since everyone knows the vast scientific potential of stem cells, no one wants to see those kinds of efforts. So, it would really be at cross purposes with the scientists' goal of curing disease and improving mankind and the human condition to use cloning technology for a purpose like reproduction.